Good morning and thank you for joining us for the first State of Texas In-Depth in 2016. The new year begins with a major policy announcement from Governor Greg Abbott. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, this year's political news will be overshadowed by the race for president. And at the center of all that activity right now is Iowa, the first state to weigh in on the nominees for president. At this moment, campaigns are crisscrossing the Hawkeye state, hoping to win over caucus supporters. KXAN's Phil Prazen joined the trail this week and joins us this morning for this State of Texas In-Depth election update.
Brooke Goodart from Lufkin, Texas, sells Ted Cruz buttons in Humboldt, Iowa, a long way from home.
I've been traveling, just hitting the roads, 2 hours, get to the next city. 2 more hours, get to the next city.
This is the senator's second stop today. He has 2 more on another whirlwind day. Kathy Landrup is another Texan. She's following the campaign, selling her gear.
The jerseys are our business. Yeah.
She sells these GOP-inspired jerseys with Cruz as this crowd's favorite player.
Oh, you know what? Well, being from West Texas, Iowa's very similar, actually. Lots of snow. It's cold right now, and for sure, but the people are just great.
I asked the senator how big the push from home really was. He says they've rented more than 80 beds at a nearby college dormitory to house the Texans.
We had volunteers here on Christmas Day who spent Christmas Day in Camp Cruz to be here helping reach out to voters, and it's a huge source of strength and enthusiasm.
Throughout this month, the campaign says more than 400 volunteers make the trip north from the Lone Star State.
I got to say, for us Texans, to be trudging through the snow in cowboy boots, it's not necessarily the safest path, but it is an incredible source of strength of this campaign.
It's a home state effort that, for now, has him on top in Iowa. Phil Prazen, KXAN News.
While Iowa may be miles away from the Lone Star State, what happens there will have an impact on your ballot. In most presidential races, the low performers in Iowa and New Hampshire drop out. The Texas primary is coming up on Super Tuesday, March 1st. Since we have the most votes up for grabs on that day, you can expect to see a lot of campaigning here in the next few months. Cruz has a lot of support here in Texas, but his biggest competitor for the GOP presidential nomination remains Donald Trump. The latest UT Texas Tribune poll shows primary Texas voters are backing both candidates. Cruz and Trump have 27% support. Neurosurgeon Ben Carson and Senator Marco Rubio follow in 3rd and 4th place. Stay with KXAN News throughout the election cycle. We will have teams in the big states and right here in the heart of Texas all year long. And be sure to check out our coverage from the road on KXAN.com. Closer to home, hundreds of conservative leaders and advocates gathered in Austin for the Texas Public Policy Foundation's annual policy orientation. At the event, Governor Greg Abbott announced he would push for a constitutional convention of states to add 9 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Abbott says Washington is broken and changes are needed to restore the Constitution that the founders intended.
The Constitution that is our foundation that is now so often ignored that the founders would hardly even recognize it. Until we fix the foundation by restoring the rule of law in this nation. And the Supreme Court is a co-conspirator in the abandonment of the United States Constitution.
Several groups, including the American Civil Liberties Union, responded to the proposal saying, "Don't mess with the Constitution." But even if there are changes, it's not an easy process. It begins in one of 2 ways, either with a proposal by 2/3 vote in Congress or a national convention called by 2/3 of the states through their legislatures, something that's never been done in the history of our nation. Obviously, as governor and previously as our state's attorney general, Abbott has gone up against the federal government, specifically President Obama's administration. Plenty in recent history, everything from health care to gun rights to illegal immigration. If this works, those fights will be a lot easier. A near 100-page plan he's calling the Texas Plan, something that includes 9 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, stopping Congress from certain state regulations, requiring Congress to balance its budget, preventing administrative agencies from both creating federal law and getting around state law, letting a 2/3 majority of states to override a Supreme Court decision, require a justice supermajority for the Supreme Court to invalidate certain laws, limiting the federal government to powers only spelled out in the Constitution, giving states the power to sue in federal court when federal officials overstep their authority, and letting a 2/3 majority of states override a federal law or regulation. Keep in mind, even if his proposal works, in order to actually make these changes to the Constitution, there's a final, even more difficult step: ratification or approval by either 3/4 of the state legislatures or 3/4 of a ratification convention, essentially a group of voters from around the state. That last method, the ratification convention, is really tough. It's only happened once ever, when they ended the national prohibition on alcohol in 1933. This is really an optimistic announcement on Abbott's part. We checked, only 27 amendments had ever been ratified since 1789, 10 of which happened very early with the Bill of Rights. In all, nearly 12,000 amendments have been proposed to Congress. You can learn more about what this process could mean for you, the voter, plus potential drawbacks right now on KXAN.com and the KXAN News app. This is a topic that will continue to generate debate, and we'll continue to dig deep into it. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas in Depth. Remember, you can join us every Sunday morning in the 8:30 half hour for a broader look at Texas politics.